Drop Table Adventures Revision 2.0 Number 2, How to get HF radio usable in a modern vehicle. So, enough about COVID. One of our goals of coming up to Queensland was to have a driveway to work on our vehicle in instead of an apartment car park. Makes a lot of things far easier. And one of them was always wanting to apply some RF noise suppression. I thought I'd just produce a slightly more useful video, especially seeing as how many times I read on forums that you just can't do this in a newer vehicle. I made a bit of a mistake by having the preamp engaged on the radio during all of the signal measurements. Later research tells me this radio is comparable to other radios when the preamp is switched off. So the figures we quote about noise levels are actually all 1 to 2 S units too high, making it seem like I did a pretty bad job at noise suppression. So number 3, Beecher State Forest. So with all the friends and family around, we got invited on a trip. None of them had ever been into this state forest in the last 20 years, and our mission was to find out what was there, and if the track was still there, and if the track was even still drivable. It was, and we had a lot of fun doing so. Number 4, L-Track in the back. Again, with more space to dismantle things, we did this while we were up there. Initial fears of mine that we wouldn't be able to get adequate fasteners to do the job were met with a reminder that Gladstone is an industrial town, and the local bolt shop actually put Bunnings very much to shame in terms of both price and selection. Number 5, Lily's Beach. Well, if there's beach driving to be had, it will be had. So we had it. Actually, we bought the yearly permit, and then went there only 3 times. Oh well. Number 6, Deepwater National Park. XSS has many memories of going there with family, but now that we have a 4-wheel drive, we can go there ourselves. And detour to Bundaberg to pick up some Royal Crown Cola, made in Australia, sold only in New Zealand. And Bundaberg. Number 7, Crumbet Tops. We went here last time we were up in Gladstone, and that crash site is, well, it's something. Fun fact, we actually drove the Mazda 2 hatchback through the first bit of that 4-wheel drive track. Back when 4-wheel drive was only strongly recommended and the track was a little better. Only a little better though. Surprisingly capable off-road if you pick your line carefully. Number 8, heading further north. While on our holiday, we decided to go on a holiday. Both of us took some time off around Christmas to New Year's and decided to head somewhere further up north. We were considering heading to one of the islands. Magnetic Island certainly seemed the most approachable, although all of the accommodation was either completely booked out or had a 5-day minimum stay. Guess we could go there for a day trip? Magnetic Island Part 1. But we packed so much into a day that it actually became 2 videos. Took the 8 AM ferry over, caught the last one back. While I could understand spending 2, maybe 3 days there were still a few things we didn't do, but I really can't imagine spending 5 days over there. And Radical Bay Road certainly is the most interesting 4-wheel drive track I've ever been on. Number 10, Magnetic Island Part 2. It might look nice, but I can assure you the weather was in the mid-30s with near 100% humidity. Truly awful for walking up a steep hill, especially not being acclimatized to anything other than Melbourne temperatures. And being a bit unfit, having spent the better part of the year not going outside much. Still, we survived, and there were a few good spots for some swimming. Number 11, Walleman Falls. While we were up there, we visited Australia's biggest waterfall. The walk back up was, I think, the hardest walk I've ever done in my life. It was somehow hotter and more humid than on Magnetic Island. We wanted to visit Blencoe Falls, near the area where Survivor the Australian Outback was filmed up here. If you're wondering, no, that's actually nowhere near the Outback in reality. Reality TV just isn't. It had been raining heavily and I couldn't find much on the river crossings that were actually required on the 4-wheel drive track out there. We decided not to risk it, finding out in the media a few days later someone got trapped out there by rising floodwaters at about the same time we chose not to go. Number 12, the Pride Radio Group Kiwi SDR install. Okay, this one ended up out of order, but I'd been collecting footage for the supercut that makes up this entire video the whole time, and the project was now suddenly complete, but I still hadn't finished sorting through the Townsville footage. Released it out of order anyway. No regrets. Number 13, Townsville Peaks. Last day in Townsville, went for a swim, took a look at some lookouts before packing the car to head back. After the adventures that had been had in previous days, we didn't really feel like doing much more than that. Number 14, replacing a winch contactor. The previous weekend we'd actually been out at Lowmead, Clarkie's petrol head heaven. No, you're still allowed to go with a diesel vehicle. Spent the day there with most of the same people from the Beecher State Forest, driving around the competition four-wheel drive course there. In hindsight, maybe we should have filmed it. There was some pretty crazy four-wheel driving across rock, mud and up some extremely steep slopes, some of which were almost too steep and slippery to walk up. But we were more concentrating on not breaking our vehicle. However, while going to recover someone from a mud pit, we found our winch didn't work, hence prompting this video. Also, while we drove into Gladstone, that winch contactor was actually still sitting in that spot under the bonnet, not in any way secured in place. It wasn't somewhere it could really fall out, but it certainly could have made a few dents in a few critical things if it had moved round. Oops. Number 15, Carnarvon Gorge. Previous conversations in which large parts of regional Victoria were described as Grampians-like were objected to by XSS on the basis that a lot of other places do in fact look like that as well. Carnarvon Gorge in Queensland was provided as one such example. We realised that we'd brought up all of the camping gear and somehow not gone camping yet, so why not head out to Carnarvon Gorge? Again, the weather didn't play nice here. Wait, we came up to Queensland for the summer? And it was 36 degrees and humid the whole time with the temperature barely dropping at night. Maybe I should have brought an HF radio into the gorge for communication. Might have worked better than VHF or UHF, but I didn't really expect that to work anyway. I was just hoping I'd get some unexpected line of sight somewhere. Carnarvon Gorge 2. After a pretty extensive first day, I was feeling pretty enthusiastic about the second. However, only I was feeling this way, so I did the rest of the gorge alone, and starting a lot later than I planned. However, I wasn't alone for that long because I ran into a group of hikers that turned out to mostly be made of individual hikers that had just joined together into a group. Still annoyed about the amphitheatre being closed though, really wanted to see that. Carnarvon Gorge 3, last day, a little unexplored gorge to go. I do wonder if I should have gone into that one further, but I was alone and I'll be back there at some point. Number 18, rewire all the things. We had a list of things we wanted to more permanently install and cabling to clean up, but all of them required removing a lot of the dashboard to achieve this. But by this point, the list was long enough that we could just do it all at once. But that ended up taking a whole weekend by itself. Rewire all the things even more. And a subsequent video to cover it all fully. That's not actually the end of it, there's a third one coming. Number 20. Return to Lily's Beach. Pride Radio Group was granted a special event call sign to use on the radio in commemoration of Sydney's Mardi Gras. Needless to say, given the usual demographic of amateur radio operators, this was not without a little bit of controversy. But plenty of people aren't like that and were happy to contact the station. The sandflies, on the other hand, were brutal. Maybe we shouldn't have camped so close to the mangroves, but they weren't anywhere near that bad last time we were in that exact spot. And the forecasted weather had high wind and rain, which should have kept them well away. Except that didn't turn out to happen. Number 21, Blackdown Tableland Part 1. So, still being up in Queensland in late February when we said we'd come back after New Year's, we postponed our return again in early March to join a trip that was on the weekend we were meant to be going back. I mean, much as describing areas as Grampians-like, I think this one is certainly more so than Carnarvon Gorge. The swimming hole, of course, was quite unexpected. We didn't actually pack any swimming gear, we didn't know it was a thing, but for once, the hot weather was on our side. Number 22, Blackdown Tableland Part 2. There's a four-wheel drive track around Blackdown, so we had to. Decided to recreate a shot from the very first video. You can see a few differences in suspension equipment there. Aside from a GoPro battery expanding and getting stuck inside the camera, it was actually a pretty good drive. Number 23, Blackdown Tableland Part 3. After doing the walk to Mook Mook and following everyone else to revisit the swimming hole, there just wasn't enough day left to do Gungundina. Unless you were crazy enough to do it entirely in the dark, which I was. The following morning with some heavy fog, the place decided to be especially Grampians-like. And that's pretty much it. A week later, we're back in Melbourne, with a small backlog of things to attend to. Track 13, Drop Table Adventures version 3, Track 13, Cathedral Range and Rubicon, Marysville to Thornton via Cathedral Range and Rubicon. So this was actually our first trip back in Melbourne, second video based on a trek from four-wheel drive trips close to Melbourne, and interestingly the two have one thing in common: problems crossing a bridge. This was our first trip where we used the drone to film, but this isn't always practical, as there's pretty much a blanket ban on them in most parks or reserves. It's pretty much only areas designated as state forests where they're definitely allowed. So on our following trip, Who is Wilson and What's a Promontory, Wilson's Prom, the Big Drift and Tongue Point, the drone didn't feature at all. This trip showcased some of the wildly differing environments of Wilson's Prom, the desert-like dunes of the Big Drift, as well as a lot of beautiful coastal areas. We didn't have enough time to explore a huge amount, but I feel like we fit a lot into a weekend. Certainly would like to go back there, especially as Mount Oberon was closed at the time. Anyway, that brings you up to the start of this series, and we've got much more to come in future. See you next time, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.